Welcome back. Our last guest today is naturopath, respiratory specialist and published author Julia Rudakova, and she will be answering the question, is asthma for life? Welcome, Julia.
Thank you so much for having me.
So, is it true? Is asthma for life?
So let's look at what asthma is and break it down from there. So asthma is a normal body response to a trigger. It could be chemical trigger, it could be a virus, could be hormones, could be emotions, could be a physical exercise. It can be dust, pollen, any irritant in the environment. And the body's natural response is to expel it, to constrict the airways, and to produce mucus. Bring it up, to take it out, to moisten the airways. And when that happens, we're forced to cough. The breathing changes. Sometimes it's harder to exhale. Sometimes for some people with asthma symptoms, it's harder to inhale. So it varies from person to person. And we need to break that vicious cycle of overbreathing when an asthmatic person gets into asthma symptoms for a prolonged period of time. When it settles in and the body starts breathing differently on a regular basis, even between asthma onsets. We start breathing differently. We're breathing more shallowly and sometimes with more force.
Is it possible to break the cycle of asthma?
Yes, of course it is. And that vicious cycle of overbreathing, I just want to break it down a little bit. What happens is that the chemoreceptors in the respiratory part of the brain, they detect how much carbon dioxide is there in the blood at all times. So it's mostly about carbon dioxide, not oxygen, right? When we think about what pushes us to take that next breath, people think, well, it's oxygen levels, it's carbon dioxide. Carbon dioxide is an amazing chemical and it's underutilized by people. And with the vicious cycle of overbreathing and mouth breathing, what happens is we lose that carbon dioxide, and it is a muscle relaxant. So when we talk about asthma, we think relaxation of the respiratory system, opening up the airways. To open them up, we need to relax the muscles of the bronchi. And to do that, we need to utilize that carbon dioxide. And to do that, we need to retrain the chemoreceptors in the respiratory part of the brain, and that's where the Buteyko breathing method comes in super handy, because there are certain exercises that we do. It's a progression. We move forward with the difficulty of the exercises. So to retrain the receptors, you need to be able to be tolerant to carbon dioxide. So the epidemic currently in the world is carbon dioxide intolerance. That pushes you to breathe fast, to breathe forcefully, to breathe a lot. And overbreathing, I always compare it to overeating. It's just as detrimental for our health on a very basic physiological chemical level. And to be able to do those exercises, you do not need any special physical preparation. As I said, we can start where the person is at, and that will break that cycle of overbreathing and bring the body back into the functional pattern, so that you breathe utilizing the right muscles, because that's very important for the chemistry in the body. When we breathe, we engage the diaphragm, and when the diaphragm is engaged, that means that the air is moved, is circulating in the lungs properly. And the most blood vessels in the lungs we have in the lower lobes, where the diaphragm is sitting. So using the right muscles, using the diaphragm is very important for establishing good chemistry in the body, and using the right organs, using the nose and doing it properly at a proper rate.
So what are some tips for people that are suffering with asthma symptoms?
I always say it's to educate yourself. Educate yourself about how your body works, what is actually happening when you have an asthma onset. And because asthma is considered to be a life-threatening condition, because breathing is the most vital function in the body. We can't survive for longer than 3 minutes without taking a breath. An average person with an average physiology, that's our time. To be able to hold that physiology, you need to know what is happening and not to freak out and know what you can do. And I want to give you an example. When my youngest son was dealing with asthma and I was helping him with various tools that I have under my belt, and that's when I started really actively using the Buteyko method, the Buteyko technique. And we went on a school camp with him, and I was one of the parent helpers. And out of nowhere, he had been asthma-free for about 3 years before that. And because of the environment, the stress of the first school camp, he was so excited. And also just living without me in a separate room, and all the dust in the old mattresses and all rugs there in the room, that triggered his old asthma patterns. And on day 2, when they were having a fishing trip, on the way back, I could see, and I was there with him, with that group, and I could see his face went white and he was struggling to take the next breath. And we just sat down on the log there on the beach, and because we didn't have Ventolin with us, he was asthma-free, he had been for a few years, and we started doing that Buteyko exercise. And it's very important for people who use Ventolin, and because you don't know how much is left, and you can help yourself with that while you're waiting for help. So we started doing that, and the color came back to his face. His lips became red again, he started breathing, and we could walk on to the group. And I think it's just such a great example about educating yourself, learning those techniques that can help you to live a healthier life. And as always, seek advice of a health professional.
Thank you so much for your time, Julia. If you'd like to know more about asthma and Julia, you can visit her webpage on our website, healthwellbeingandlifestyle.com.au. And now we'll say goodbye until next week.